Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named The X-Files, Season 5, Part 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins in Kazakhstan, where an unidentified flying object streaks across the sky. At the same time, the local civilian population is brutally attacked, leaving nothing but a blazing wasteland behind. The next morning, the UN agent, working with the United Nations peacekeeping forces, arrives on the scene, shortly followed by Alex and his unit. Alex serves at a Russian detention camp notorious for abducting civilians to conduct black oil experiments aimed at developing a vaccine against the alien black oil virus. The UN agent senses this attack is different from anything before. Alex, however, knows the truth behind the assault, but is unwilling to share it with her. Cut to Mulder, who is at MIT participating in a heated debate on the existence of extraterrestrials. Several civilians claim they have been abducted by aliens. These so-called X-patients firmly believe the aliens will one day take them back to their home planet. Having been through too many hoaxes, Mulder argues that alien abductions are just cover stories spread by the military to mask human experimentation, and that the X-patients are merely brainwashed test subjects. His remarks cause an uproar. After the debate, Mulder runs into a doctor in the audience. Through their conversation, it becomes clear that Mulder now believes his sister's alleged alien abduction years ago was also a military brainwashing operation. The doctor introduces Mulder to one of the X-patients, who is in a wheelchair. She excitedly recounts her alien abduction experience and insists the aliens will come to take her off this Earth one day. Mulder senses she's deeply troubled and decides not to press further. The woman's son, Spender, an FBI agent, approaches Scully and expresses his wish that his mother not be disturbed, subtly warning Mulder to stay away. This gives Scully pause, especially after learning that the woman's abduction took place in Scarlin Mountain National Park, the same place where Scully herself was once abducted. Determined to uncover the truth behind the series of abductions, Scully visits the woman alone. Strangely, despite it being their first meeting, the woman recognizes her and speaks in a way Scully doesn't understand. That night, more civilians gathered in Scarlin Mountain National Park are attacked. A faceless assailant armed with weapons burns them alive. The next morning, Mulder and Scully arrive at the crime scene, finding the victims are all self-proclaimed X-patients. The scene shifts to the secret organization's meeting where members discuss the two attacks. The UN agent reports that each victim had a microchip implanted behind their ear and reveals that all had been abducted by aliens. The members are eager to uncover the truth behind the assaults. At that moment, Alex calls in claiming he knows the truth, and that the organization is also researching a vaccine for the black oil virus. He proposes to trade the truth for their research data. The UN agent meets Alex in person. It turns out they are former lovers. On the surface, the UN agent acts like they're catching up, but secretly she absconds with a key eyewitness Alex was protecting, only to find the witness is already infected with the black oil virus, which means the UN agent has now been exposed as well. The situation becomes dire. No vaccine against the black oil virus has yet been successfully developed. A white-haired man seizes Alex, revealing he knows the Russians have actually created an effective vaccine, and that Alex managed to steal a sample from the Russian camp. The scene shifts to Mulder and Scully, who are investigating the attacks at Scarlin Mountain Park. Scully seems deep in thought, and when Mulder snaps back to reality, she's vanished, along with Spender's mother. Like the other X-patients, Scully appears to have been drawn by some mysterious force to a nearby bridge. Suddenly, a UFO flies overhead, stirring excitement among the crowd. But then, two faceless men appear on the bridge and start setting fire to the civilians. By the time the authorities arrive, everyone on the bridge has been burned alive, except for Scully, who somehow survives. Agent Spender rushes to the scene looking for his mother, but finds no body, only her abandoned wheelchair. Scully wakes up in a hospital bed with no memory of what happened the night before. Cut to a UFO crashing at an Air Force base, killing one faceless man and injuring another. The military quickly arrests the survivor. The secret organization monitoring these events learns about the crash, and the white-haired man theorizes that the faceless men are alien rebels, fighters who destroyed their own faces to prevent the black oil virus from entering through their senses. The war between humans and aliens has begun. Fortunately, Alex hands over the stolen vaccine in exchange for his freedom. The white-haired man argues that with the vaccine in hand, humanity now has a chance to fight back. He suggests forming an alliance with the alien rebels, but the organization rejects the idea, deciding instead to hand over the faceless man to maintain a fragile peace on Earth. Mulder and Scully meet with the doctor, who helps Scully recover her memories of what happened on the bridge. That night, she and the other ex-patients saw a triangular UFO, followed by two faceless men who set the place on fire. Suddenly, another UFO appeared, killed the faceless men, and took away Spender's mother. Mulder remains skeptical, convinced it's all a military cover-up to hide human experimentation. That night at home, Mulder encounters Alex hiding out there. Alex warns him the war has already started, and the aliens plan to colonize Earth. Though usually unscrupulous, Alex seems sincere this time, making Mulder start to question his doubts. Alex reveals that the faceless men are alien rebels opposing the invasion, but that one rebel has been captured by the secret organization. He asks Mulder to find a way to rescue him and whispers something in Mulder's ear. Later that night, with Scully's help, Mulder sneaks into the Air Force base and climbs onto the truck transporting the faceless man. Suddenly, the truck stops and the driver removes his hat. It's the alien bounty hunter known to appear wherever aliens are involved. The bounty hunter pulls out an ice pick, clearly intending to kill the faceless man. Just then, a bright flash lights up outside, and another faceless man floats into the truck, weapon in hand. Mulder fires at them both, but when the smoke clears, the bounty hunter and the faceless men have vanished, and Mulder is arrested by the military. Worse, he has no memory of what just happened. Finally, the UN agent recovers, proving the vaccine works. Humanity now has a weapon against the aliens. Meanwhile, Spender still hasn't found his mother, causing him great anguish. He receives a letter signed from Canada. The scene shifts to a small cabin there where the letter was sent from, and the camera zooms in to reveal the sender was the smoking man. This episode wraps up here. It introduces a new element, the alien rebels, who have come to stop the aliens from colonizing Earth. From the perspective of the white-haired man, these rebels seem to be allies of humanity. We also get hints from conversations within the secret organization that, to protect Earth from colonization, they've been making compromises with the aliens, even handing over some of these rebels. Why the rebels are killing the ex-patients remains a mystery, for now. Hopefully, future episodes will shed more light on this. The return of the smoking man at the end is a real surprise. The actor who plays Spender actually portrayed a younger smoking man back in Season 4, so it's pretty clear that Smoking Man and Spender are father and son. However, from what we see so far, Spender might not be aware of this connection yet. The scene shifts to a horrific human experiment conducted by the US government to combat the Soviets. The setting is 1990. A sheriff arrives at a small, filthy cabin owned by an elderly recluse named Skur. The place is a mess and reeks badly. In the bathroom, the sheriff finds a corpse, nothing left but a skin shell. Skur quietly approaches, and the sheriff fires a warning shot. The old man tumbles down the stairs, losing his strength to fight back. In his final moments, he keeps murmuring Mulder's name. Cut to years earlier, Mulder is still a fresh-faced FBI rookie who hasn't met Scully yet. He seeks out Dales, a retired FBI agent. It turns out Skur was a serial killer known for a gruesome but unusual method. He removed victims' organs without damaging their skin. Skur disappeared 38 years ago, and Dales was the lead investigator on the case. Mulder is eager to get inside information from Dales, but is met with a cold shoulder. Disappointed, Mulder returns home and digs through case files from 38 years ago, discovering many key details have been redacted. While watching a decades-old State Department meeting on video, he spots his own father. Remembering Skur's last words, Mulder realizes the Mulder Skur was calling out to was his father, which means his dad was involved in the Skur case. Since Mulder's relationship with his father isn't great, he returns to Dales, desperate to learn how Skur managed to extract organs without harming the skin, and what exactly his father's connection to Skur was. The old agent begins to reminisce. Flashback to 1952, when Dales is a young FBI agent. They're ordered to arrest a man named Skur, accused of treason. Skur worked at the State Department and was baffled by the charges, insisting he was innocent. That night, Dales receives a call. Skur committed suicide after his arrest. Feeling guilty, Dales waits outside Skur's house, wanting to comfort Skur's beautiful wife. But then, he sees a familiar figure, the very same Skur who supposedly died 2 hours earlier. Dales rushes out to arrest him but is pinned to the ground by Skur. Skur's mouth opens wide, his eyes roll back, and suddenly, 2 tentacles shoot out from his mouth. At the last second, a passerby interrupts Skur, allowing him to escape. Dales snapped back to reality and immediately went to the FBI to write a full report on what had happened. His report caused quite a stir with his superiors, and soon he was called to the Department of Justice. There, the Attorney General gave him a stern lecture, basically telling Dales to revise his report and cut out all the parts about Skur. Under pressure, Dales reluctantly went back and started editing the report. But just as he'd typed a few words, his partner came with news of a more serious case. They rushed to the scene. The victim was a German doctor who, judging by a photo of him shaking hands with the president hanging on the wall, clearly had some powerful connections. But the body was grotesque. Nothing left but an empty skin shell, the organs removed. Suddenly, police burst in. It turned out someone mysterious had reported the crime to both the police and the FBI at the same time. At the crime scene, Dales found a business card from a bar with a message on the back requesting a private meeting. The person who wanted to meet was none other than Mulder's father. He revealed that Skur wasn't a traitor at all. In fact, he was a patriot. Along with 2 other veterans, Skur had been tricked by the government into taking part in a human experiment that turned them into monsters. To cover it up, the government branded them traitors and arrested them. The 2 veterans committed suicide under persecution, and though the government claimed Skur had done the same, he'd actually escaped. Now, twisted by revenge, Skur was hunting down everyone who had wronged him. Dales and his partner were on Skur's hit list. While they talked, Skur had already broken into Dale's partner's home. A creature crawled out of Skur's mouth and burrowed into Dale's partner, devouring his organs. When Dales arrived, all that was left was an empty skin shell. The Attorney General showed up as well. To cover up the truth, he took the partner's body away and threatened Dales to stay out of it, or he'd arrest him as a traitor. Threatened but undeterred, Dales pressed on. He recalled that Mulder's father had mentioned the 2 other test subjects who died. Luckily, one of them still had his body in the morgue, bearing a surgical scar. An autopsy revealed a living tentacle creature inside the body. Clearly, someone had surgically implanted these monsters into their victims. Dales sought out Skur's wife and asked her to pass on a message. He wanted to talk to Skur to understand everything. She found Skur hiding in a cellar, but the creature inside him was out of control. It emerged and killed Skur's wife. After leaving Skur's house, Dales was quickly taken away by the Attorney General's men and brought to the Washington Bureau headquarters. The director told Dales that in order to fight the Soviet threat, they'd been experimenting with human modification, and Skur was the result. To win, you have to be crueler than your enemy. Dales dared not argue. Since Dales had arranged to meet Skur at the bar, the Attorney General bugged him with listening devices. Mulder's father, who was actually an agent for the Attorney General, knew the truth. The Attorney General only pretended to want Dales's help capturing Skur, but really intended to use Skur to kill Dales. When Skur showed up, he was gaunt and remorseful, saying he'd accidentally killed his wife and was racked with guilt. Before long, he lost control and pinned Dales down. Tentacles slithered out of Skur's mouth. In the nick of time, Dales managed to cuff Skur to a pipe and escape. Mulder's father rushed in when he heard the silence and was relieved to find Dales alive. With Skur in custody, Dales's flashback ended. Mulder felt sick. He couldn't believe his hero father had been mixed up with such dark deeds. But one mystery remained. How did Skur escape after being arrested? Dales speculated maybe someone with a conscience let him go, and he wasn't wrong. Right after the arrest, Mulder's father drove Skur out of the lab and handed him the key to his handcuffs. On a bright, clear day, they parted ways, each walking down a different road. Mulder's father helped Skur escape, hoping that one day Skur would return to the public eye with the truth and bring justice to the victims. What he didn't realize, though, was that Skur had become a killer, completely unable to control the monster inside him. After escaping, Skur continued his killing spree. Years later, he would die in a hail of police gunfire. Perhaps, in his final moments, when Skur kept calling Mulder's father's name, it was out of guilt, for failing him and for betraying the hope placed in him. The scene shifts to a woman named Marty returning home alone. As she lit a cigarette, a terrifying vision flashed before her eyes, a man being murdered. She couldn't shake it off. Immediately, she took a cab to the location she saw in her vision. To her surprise, the police arrived there too. Marty, caught right at the scene, was immediately arrested. Here's the twist. The cops discovered Marty was blind. She couldn't see a thing. Cut to Mulder and Scully taking over the bizarre case. The victim was a small-time criminal with a long rap sheet. The cause of death was a clean, C-shaped incision near his right kidney, which caused him to bleed out in just 30 seconds. Since Marty was found at the crime scene, she was naturally the prime suspect. But things didn't add up. Marty, 28, had been blind since birth. And although she did have a criminal record, the idea that a petite blind woman could take down a strong man using such a precise technique seemed far-fetched. Mulder and Scully visited Marty in custody. She was defiant, sarcastic, and utterly unbothered by the threat of prosecution. After all, how could a blind woman commit such a surgical murder? The DA wouldn't buy it, especially since the murder weapon hadn't even been found. She was banking on walking free. Mulder, sensing she might be innocent, approached her with kindness. But Marty wanted none of it. Still, he brought her in for a polygraph test. When asked if she knew the victim, she answered no. But the lie detector told a different story. The results spiked. Then Mulder asked if she'd witnessed the murder in some other way, and the machine's readings spiked again. He was onto something. After the test, Marty had another vision, a red-haired woman being harassed in a bar. Suddenly, she burst into laughter and said she needed to make a call. She called the bar and told the staff to hand the phone to the man harassing the redhead. A middle-aged, balding man picked up the bald phone, and it turned out his eyes were what Marty had seen through. Marty warned him to stay away from the redhead. The man was baffled. He had no idea who Marty even was. The scene shifts to Scully, who has returned to the crime scene. In a hidden spot, she discovers a pair of gloves stained with blood and marked with Marty's fingerprints. Clearly, Marty had tried to hide them, but even with this discovery, without the murder weapon, it still isn't enough to convict her. Mulder investigates Marty's background and finds that over the years, she has refused to accept any disability benefits. Perhaps her arrogance is just a mask for deep insecurity, a way to keep others from seeing her as disabled. But Scully has another theory. She suspects Marty isn't completely blind. Maybe Marty refused the benefits because she feared she wouldn't pass a proper medical exam. It's a plausible hypothesis. So they immediately bring Marty in for an eye exam. The results confirm her vision is completely gone. She truly can't see. But then Mulder notices something strange. On the monitor, Marty's pupils begin to contract rapidly. She's having another vision. This time she sees the bald man stash contraband in a locker at the train station and then enter a bar. Marty doesn't tell Mulder about what she saw. Since the 48-hour detention period has passed and the evidence is still insufficient, she's released from custody. But just as she walks free, she has another vision. The bald man confronting the red-haired woman at the bar. He demands to know if she was the one behind the mysterious warning call the night before. Marty sees that the bar is just a few blocks away. She desperately asks a passerby to help her get there in time, but she's too late. The bald man murders the woman and dumps her body in a nearby trash bin. And then, in a baffling move, Marty walks into the police station and confesses to both murders. Despite her detailed account of how the killings happened, she offers no motive. Mulder doesn't believe she's the killer. He's convinced she somehow witnessed the crimes, but doesn't know how to explain it. Yet Marty remains silent, refusing to reveal the truth. She signs a confession and even tells the police about the contraband hidden in the station locker. She claims that's why she killed over the contraband. Eager to close the case, the police don't press for further details. Then Scully calls because the blood analysis on the gloves is in. The DNA reveals two distinct sources, one from the victim, the other from Marty's biological relative. Mulder confronts Marty with the truth. 28 years ago, her mother was murdered, killed using the same C-shaped incision. She died during childbirth, and Marty, barely born, likely lost her sight due to excessive blood loss during the delivery. The case was never solved. It turns out that from that moment, a strange link formed between Marty and the killer. She's been able to see the world through his eyes, literally. That's how she witnessed the crimes. That's also why, despite everything, she instinctively wanted to protect him. But even now, she refuses to help Mulder identify him. Then, during a prisoner transport, Marty suddenly sees herself through the killer's eyes. The bald man is furious that his locker was emptied. He's tracked her down. He's on his way to the station, having discovered from others that Marty was the one who ratted him out. Thanks to Mulder's persistence, Marty is released again due to lack of conclusive evidence. The locker bore no trace of her fingerprints, only the bald man's. The police finally identify him as the true suspect. He had a criminal record and had just been paroled 3 months ago. Mulder breaks the truth to Marty. The bald man is her father. That's the bond between them. Marty is stunned. Now it makes sense. The visions, the strange emotional pull, the need to protect him. And now she knows she's next on her father's killing list. Determined to put an end to it, she agrees to help Mulder. She gives Mulder the address of the bar, but when he gets there, the bald man is nowhere to be found. No traces of his hair. That's when it hits him. Marty misled him on purpose. Meanwhile, Marty returns to her apartment with the sheriff, preparing to be relocated to a safer location. Calmly, she tells the sheriff that the bald man has been tailing him all day and that he knows exactly where they are. The sheriff doesn't quite grasp what she means. Then, without warning, Marty grabs a kettle and knocks him out cold. She takes his sidearm, opens the door, and hides in the corner, ready for the killer to arrive. Downstairs, the bald man spotted Marty's apartment number on the mailbox panel. Without giving the unconscious sheriff a second glance, he pulled out his weapon and began searching the apartment for Marty. But Marty could see him, not with her own eyes, but through his. As he crept closer, step by step, she gauged his position. Then suddenly, she stood up. She said coldly that she hated the way he looked at her and fired a shot straight into his bald head, ending his bald life. Marty was arrested again, this time for assaulting a police officer, and returned to jail. But she was no longer the same person. The experience had changed her. The arrogance was gone, replaced with a new sense of peace. She smiled as she told Mulder she'd never seen the ocean before. But from now on, whenever she closes her eyes, she can picture the beautiful sea. But one question remains. Why did Marty go to such lengths to protect the bald man? She didn't even know who he was. Not really. She had no memory of him. Marty was born without parents. Her father was a monster. He killed her mother and disappeared. Her mother died on the operating table, giving birth. And Marty, blind from the moment she entered the world, never had a chance to see it. God took her vision, but gave her the ability to see through the eyes of the man who destroyed her family. That invisible bond tied Marty to a killer. As a blind woman, Marty had cherished this borrowed sense. It was her only window into the world. She knew that if the bald man were caught and imprisoned, all she'd see would be cold iron bars and prison walls, a reflection of her own life behind bars. So she tried to protect him, even clean up his messes. Over the years, living through his perspective, she slowly lost her own identity. Eventually, she started believing she was the killer, that she had committed the murders, and in her quiet, guilt-ridden way, she thought she needed to atone, so she confessed. After all, even in prison, she'd still be able to see the outside world, or so she thought. But then came the moment the bald man found her, and for the first time, she saw herself through his eyes, and in that moment, she found herself again. She was not him. She was her own person. Why should she suffer for his sins? And yet, she didn't want him arrested either. If he was locked up forever, she would be locked in darkness with him. So she did the only thing she could. She ended it herself. Marty lost her connection to the world. She lost her vision entirely, but in doing so, she gained something even more precious, the ability to feel the world through her own heart, to experience its quiet kindness. The scene shifts to a priest visiting the home of a devout family to perform a coming-of-age baptism for their daughter, Dara, who has just turned 18. Dara was born with a congenital condition and has spent her life in a wheelchair. The priest sprinkles holy water on her forehead and blesses her before leaving. Later that night, a heavy rain falls. At the stroke of midnight, the bells toll 12 times, and Dara miraculously rises from her bed and stands on her own. Her father, hearing movement, rushes to her room, only to see Dara walking toward the window, alone. Just beyond the yard, a mysterious man is waiting. Dara approaches him, kneels, and raises her hands in prayer. A flash of blinding light follows, and the man vanishes. Dara, with a serene and beautiful smile on her face, passes away. The next scene cuts to Scully, speaking with the priest after Mass. He tells her about Dara's sudden and unexplained death and confesses that he doesn't believe the local police can solve the mystery. Since Scully works for the FBI, he hopes she can help. Dara's adoptive parents explain that they took her in 6 years ago. She had a congenital illness that left her unable to walk. Her father, shaken by her death, struggles with his faith. Why would God allow this to happen? Scully deeply empathizes and agrees to investigate. The local coroner's report is inconclusive. They suspect lightning might be the cause of death, but there are no external burn marks except for damage to Dara's eyes. It's bizarre. They also note that Dara was born with 6 fingers, though one was surgically removed. Later, Father Gregory arrives at a psychiatric hospital. A small crucifix hangs upside down from the rearview mirror of his car. He's come to collect a girl named Paula, but before he can take her, a social worker approaches and informs him that there's a problem with his paperwork. The priest leaves to sort it out. Inside the dim hospital room, Paula sits curled up in the shadows. She, too, has 6 fingers. The same man from earlier enters Paula's room. The moment she sees him, she raises her hands in silent prayer, just like Dara. A golden light floods the room, and just like Dara, Paula peacefully passes away. The scene shifts to Scully, who is staring at a childhood photo of her sister and thinking about her own late daughter, Emily, with overwhelming sadness. She tells Mulder about the case she's working on and asks him to help her locate adoption records for Dara. Scully races to the psychiatric hospital. Paula is dead and a crucifix is hanging upside down in her room. Mulder arrives with Dara's pre-adoption file and learns that Dara was one of quadruplets. Paula, who just died, was one of her sisters. That means there are 2 more long-lost sisters unaccounted for. Mulder notices the inverted inverted cross and believes it's a blasphemous symbol. Because Paula and Dara suffered from physical and psychological afflictions and both had severe burns around their eyes, Mulder suspects a religious extremist is enacting an eye for an eye in these murders. At that moment, the same social worker appears again. He claims to be a staff member at the hospital and tells them that Father Gregory had intended to take Paula out of the facility. Mulder and Scully head to the church where they find a copy of the Gnostic Gospel on the table, a sure sign it's not a mainstream Christian congregation. Father Gregory, devastated by Paula's death, confesses he'd known she would die. He had arranged all the paperwork to bring Paula to the church for protection. He explains that Paula's mother, one of his parishioners, died giving birth to the quadruplets. He insists that Paula's death wasn't an accident or a human crime, but rather a battle between good and evil. As a devout Christian, Scully believes this may be a supernatural case. Mulder accuses Father Gregory of orchestrating the murders to cover up his own crimes. He urges Scully to perform an autopsy on Paula. During the exam, Scully discovers a pair of bony protrusions on Paula's shoulders, as if undeveloped wings. Suddenly, Scully has a vision of her daughter, Emily. Thinking she's merely exhausted and letting her imagination run wild, she ignores it. Meanwhile, with the social worker's help, Mulder tracks down the third sister, who has escaped from foster care and is hiding in an abandoned church. Inside, she sees the same eerie man with a terrible face. A golden light flashes, and she too dies peacefully. Mulder rushes to this abandoned church and sees a figure in the distance. It's Father Gregory. The priest tells him they are once again too late. The girl has been taken by the devil. Mulder scoffs at the idea of devils or angels. He drags Father Gregory to the police station, where the priest is praying over the deceased girl's body. Mulder demands to know why, if the priest is so holy, he would commit such atrocities. Father Gregory looks pained and, unable to speak, instead gestures to Scully to explain. Scully translates. In Catholic legend, St. Peter was Jesus' favored disciple but felt himself unworthy to be crucified in the same way. So he voluntarily allowed himself to be crucified upside down, believing it honored Jesus more fully. Father Gregory uses the inverted crucifix as a sign of reverence, not blasphemy. Hearing that explanation, Mulder is left speechless. Father Gregory then tells Scully that from Dara's and Paula's conditions, the physical deformities, the burned eyes, the undeveloped wings, she must realize who these 4 girls were. He pleads with her to let him go and protect the 4th sister, saying if the devil takes the 4th girl, he wins. Scully says nothing and leaves the interrogation room. Mulder's investigation leads him to the 4th sister's location. He assumes she'll be safe with her foster family, but when they arrive, she has already been taken by Father Gregory. Back in the interrogation room, Father Gregory hears a whisper and looks up to see the social worker standing over him. It turns out that man is the devil in disguise, sent to collect all 4 girls. The devil demands to know the location of the remaining sister. Father Gregory insists she's already been taken, but the devil sneers that the first 3 were stolen from him, and furious that Father Gregory refused to cooperate further, he subjects the priest to a cruel torture, sending him to meet Satan. Then the devil walks away, leaving the priest's body behind. That night, Scully was about to drive home when she accidentally dropped her car keys. As she bent down to pick them up, she suddenly noticed a mysterious man standing in front of her. His body shimmered with golden light, and his face kept shifting into different forms. Though he didn't harm her, Scully was shaken. The next day, she found the priest and told him everything she had seen. The priest explained that what she encountered was a 6-winged angel, a seraph. Seraphim are said to have 4 faces, that of a man, a lion, an eagle, and a bull. According to legend, an angel once fell in love with a mortal woman, and together they had 4 daughters. These daughters possessed angelic souls but mortal bodies. Born with physical and psychological defects, they suffered greatly in the human world. God, moved by their pain, sent a 6-winged angel to earth to guide their souls to heaven. The angel's divine light, however, would burn their eyes in the process. After leaving the church, Scully ran into the social worker again, who was, in truth, the devil in disguise. He told her the 4th girl was hiding in the church and offered to drive her there. Outside the church, he insisted Scully bring the girl out. By chance, Scully caught a glimpse of his shadow. It had horns. She said nothing but went inside and found the 4th girl in a storage room. Scully tried to take her somewhere safe, but just then, a door burst open in a flash of golden light. The 6-winged angel had arrived. The girl, as if entranced, began walking toward the light. Scully held her back, refusing to let go. In that moment, the girl's form shifted. She looked exactly like Emily, Scully's late daughter. The girl gently asked Scully to release her. Tearfully, Scully let go and watched as Emily walked into the divine light. When the radiance faded, both the angel and the devil had vanished, leaving behind only the girl's lifeless body, kneeling as if in prayer. In the final scene, Scully returns to the church for confession. The priest tells her that everything she saw was likely a hallucination, but truth and illusion often blur. Who's to say what was real? In the story, the priest tells Scully that simply gazing upon the seraph's wings can lift a soul to heaven, though the intense light would burn human eyes. The legend of the four girls is not recognized by the official church, which is why the priest insists that what Scully experienced was a psychological projection. But there's a contradiction. No one can look directly at a seraph without suffering damage, yet Scully came away unscathed. It's likely the angel she saw was a vision triggered by Father Gregory's influence. The final image of Emily walking into the light represents Scully's deep longing and unresolved grief for her daughter. It's a comforting illusion, a way for her to find peace and finally let go. Her act of releasing Emily symbolizes emotional closure. She is ready to move on. The scene shifts to Mulder being out for a jog in the park early one morning. The FBI has received intel that a terrorist named Haley is set to make a trade with a buyer. The agency has the park surrounded with undercover agents posing as everyday joggers and dog walkers. Haley soon arrives and hands a bond to the buyer. Mulder watches from a distance, waiting for the transaction to complete. But suddenly the buyer screams and collapses. Haley pretends to help him, calling for help, but in the chaos, he slips away. The buyer's body begins to disintegrate. His muscles appear to melt as if corroded. Forensics quickly determine that Haley is carrying a highly corrosive biochemical toxin. Mulder is assigned to track him down alone. Worried for his safety, Scully follows in the RV. From a distance, she spots Mulder intentionally letting Haley escape. Later, Mulder casually tells her Haley got away. Suspicious, Scully confronts him, but Mulder doesn't answer. A government hearing is convened to investigate the incident. Haley is revealed as a high-ranking member of a terrorist group aiming to overthrow the government. The dealer was an arms broker. Haley handed him a bond to purchase weapons, only to kill him with that unknown toxin. At the hearing, CIA officials ask where the toxin came from. Some suggest Haley stole it from the Soviets. The group's leader is named Oggs, a ruthless mastermind who poses the greatest current threat to national security. Cut to Oggs entering a movie theater under the guise of buying popcorn. Once the attendant is distracted, Oggs, wearing gloves, pulls out the same biochemical toxin. In an instant, everyone seated in the theater dissolves into skeletons. The two young men sneaking in for free tickets flee in terror. That evening, Scully tails Mulder and discovers he didn't go home but checked into a motel. Inside, Mulder receives a call from Haley, who's realized the FBI had set up the entire park to entrap him. Haley accuses Mulder of betrayal. Mulder insists he was just following Justice Department orders. Leaving the motel, Mulder follows Haley's instructions and gets into a waiting car. Scully, suspicious, jumps into a second car and follows. But halfway there, they find themselves boxed in by two vehicles, one in front of them and one behind. Suit-clad men jump out and escort Scully into a nearby office. There, she finds her superior and a high-ranking CIA official. They explain to her that Mulder is on a secret assignment. He's feigning defection to infiltrate the terrorist group from the inside. Haley knew Mulder was disillusioned with the government and tried to recruit him as a mole. The park standoff and the public hearing were all for show. Just then, they receive word of the theater massacre. 14 bodies, all melted to skeletons. Strangely, the two young men who snuck in were unharmed. The toxin must not spread through the air, so how did every other moviegoer turn to bone? Back at a remote cabin, Mulder is bound to a chair by Haley's men. Haley yanks Mulder's pinky finger to interrogate him. Mulder angrily denies he betrayed Haley. In response, Haley crushes Mulder's pinky, breaking it with sheer force. He then pulls out the biochemical toxin, poised to kill Mulder on the spot. In that moment, Mulder remains calm and tells Haley he never revealed his location. If Haley believes someone ratted him out, then there must be a mole within Haley's own ranks. The idea plants doubt in Haley's paranoid mind. Eventually, he decides to trust Mulder. Mulder, wounded, is sent home, where Scully has been anxiously waiting for him. Scully helps splint his broken finger. Mulder, believing Scully cannot see or suspect anything, spills everything he knows. He doesn't realize there's a bug in the room. Oggs, hiding in the shadows downstairs, hears every word. The next day, Mulder tells Skinner and the CIA official that Haley is planning to rob a federal bank. He even hands Haley the bank's schedule. Then Mulder is introduced to Oggs, the organization's leader. Oggs already knows Mulder is undercover. Rather than expose him, Oggs gives him a vampire vampire mask and has him join the bank heist. The robbery itself goes off without a hitch, but Mulder shouldn't have been surprised when he learns the heist was merely a distraction. Their true objective is to contaminate every bill in circulation with the biochemical toxin. It's a plan to destroy America's entire cash supply, a devastating blow, since everyone still relies on cash. The scene shifts to Scully, who delivers the biochemical toxin to a research facility for testing. The results reveal that the substance is a genetically modified strain of Streptococcus. A lab technician subtly hints that the technology used likely originated from a domestic research lab. Alarmed, Scully contacts Skinner. Turns out the toxin was actually developed by the US government, and the CIA had known all along, yet they played the FBI like fools. At the same time, Scully uncovers the truth behind the deaths in the movie theater. The civilians had all come into contact with contaminated banknotes. Skinner keeps his composure, saying nothing to the CIA official sitting across from him. The two continue their polite conversation, smiling on the surface while silently cursing each other. Meanwhile, the terrorist group wraps up their operation and begins rapidly destroying evidence. Mulder finally learns the real reason behind the bank heist. Oggs plans to kill him, but Haley objects. Manipulated by Mulder, Haley begins to suspect that Oggs might actually be the traitor within the group. But before things escalate, Oggs plays a trump card, a recording of Mulder and Scully's private conversation. Mulder's cover is blown. With his identity exposed and Haley blamed for bringing a mole into the fold, both men are thrown into chaos. Oggs, perhaps out of nostalgia or old loyalty, gives Haley a car key and tells him to go. As for Mulder, a henchman is ordered to escort him to a secluded location to be executed. Kneeling on the ground, Mulder prepares for the worst, but in a dramatic twist, Oggs shows up, kills the henchman, hands Mulder a car key, and tells him to run. Mulder rushes to the Federal Reserve Bank and urgently warns everyone not to touch the contaminated cash. Luckily, Scully had already alerted other departments, and the bills had been quarantined in time. Mulder informs Skinner that Oggs is actually an ally, but Scully drops a bombshell. The toxin came from a government lab. The entire FBI, including Mulder himself, had been used by the government. The 14 civilians in the theater were nothing more than test subjects in a live experiment. Just then, the smug CIA official steps forward, calmly claiming that the deaths of those civilians had nothing to do with the government. He insists the quarantined bills tested negative for any toxins. He admits he always knew the heist was just a cover. The true goal was to contaminate the currency supply. The toxin was government-made, and he purposely sent Mulder on a suicide mission. And even if they now know the truth, they can't do anything. Helpless, everyone watches as the arrogant CIA man walks away, untouched and unrepentant. In the final moments, we see Haley driving away, only to collapse and die at the roadside. Turns out, the car key Oggs gave him was also laced with the biochemical toxin. In this story, the biochemical toxin is a government-developed weapon. Oggs' so-called terrorist organization was likely backed by the US government itself, and the toxin was originally provided to them. But in this covert operation, Haley had no knowledge of the full plan. It was too classified. However, terrorists don't stay loyal for long. Once Oggs got his hands on the toxin, he turned against his handlers and used it on innocent civilians in the theater, forcing the government's hand. Meanwhile, because Mulder had previously exposed human experiments in public, the CIA saw this as the perfect opportunity to eliminate him. They planted him as a mole, hoping Haley would do the dirty work. But Mulder earned Haley's trust instead. Oggs, already aware of Mulder's cover, played along and used the situation to get rid of Haley, the organization's second-in-command and a rival for power. Contaminating the nation's cash with a bioweapon is a full-blown declaration of war. But Oggs let Mulder live, knowing he'd keep digging and continue exposing the government's hypocrisy. The scene shifts to Gary, a telemarketer at Warner Corporation, who is just going about his workday when he hears a strange noise in his earpiece. Looking up, he sees a shadowy figure flicker in the distance. The shape darts through the crowd, visible only to Gary. Terrified, he begins rambling incoherently to the customer on the phone. He whispers, "It's coming," the "it" being the creature only he can see. Cut to Skinner, who receives an audio recording containing a potential threat. The recording is traced back to Warner Corporation, a massive company with 5 branches nationwide. Interestingly, the year before, an employee at one of the branches also claimed to have seen a monster before opening fire inside the office. Concerned, Skinner assigns Mulder to assess the risk at Warner's Chicago branch. Mulder is annoyed, feeling the task is a complete waste of time. Still, he heads to the office alone. The company CEO hands him a cassette tape that had been anonymously mailed to a local TV station. On it, a man warns that there's a monster at Warner Corp that hunts humans, but it hides in the light, invisible to the naked eye. The speaker insists he's the only one who can see it, but it's too powerful for him to defeat alone. Desperate, he sent out the tape asking for help from the public. The CEO wants Mulder to track down the man who sent the recording. This kind of talk could seriously damage the company's reputation. Mulder listens to the tape several more times and concludes that the man is delusional and simply craving attention. It's clear that the sender is Gary. Now, Gary lives in constant paranoia and fear. He has feelings for his coworker, but they're not reciprocated. One day, the boss calls the girl into his office. Gary tries to stop her, only to be mocked in return. He watches helplessly as the door closes behind her and then hears her scream. Strangely, none of the other employees react. When the girl emerges, she looks perfectly normal to everyone else. But in Gary's eyes, she's become a pale, zombified version of herself. Convinced he's running out of time, Gary loads a gun and decides to fight back. Feeling isolated in his investigation, Mulder calls Scully to join him. Before she arrives, he pays another visit to Warner Corp, only to find that Gary has already taken the entire office hostage at gunpoint. Now, even Mulder is a hostage. Gary demands a live interview from the local TV station, threatening to harm people if they refuse. He wants to expose the truth about the monster. He declares the company's CEO is the creature, accusing him of sucking the souls and hormones out of his employees and turning them into sexy zombies. Trying not to escalate things, Mulder pretends he's just there for a job interview. Scully arrives on the scene just as the building is surrounded by police. Realizing Mulder is inside, they try to contact him by phone, but the call gives Gary a chance to discover Mulder's badge and concealed weapon, blowing his cover. As tensions rise, an employee lunges at Gary. He spins around and shoots the man, claiming he was already a zombie being psychically controlled by the CEO. The CEO pleads with Gary to release the hostages, telling him to take out his anger on him instead. The contrast between the CEO's calmness and Gary's frenzy is stark. Left with no choice, the TV station agrees to broadcast Gary's interview live, but they don't realize Gary plans to kill the CEO on camera. Just in time, Mulder steps between them, trying to talk Gary down. Suddenly, the police cut the power. In the darkness, Gary yells at Mulder to turn around. When Mulder does, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. The CEO has actually transformed into a monstrous creature. Before Mulder can react, an FBI armored vehicle crashes in. Agents storm the room and open fire, killing Gary on the spot. As he lies dying, Gary gasps, asking if he believes him now. Until that very moment, Gary seems just paranoid and delusional, but the twist came faster than a tornado and slapped everyone right in the face. Mulder couldn't take his eyes off Gary's boss. Deep down, he still didn't want to believe what he'd seen, but Gary's words echoed in his mind. The monster hides in the light. Mulder started to suspect that the boss, like certain insects, might emit something in the light that hypnotized everyone around him, everyone except Gary, who somehow remained awake. Unsurprisingly, when he shared this theory with Scully, she began to think he might be losing it too. Desperate to prove he wasn't crazy, Mulder urged Scully to re-examine the body of the employee who'd been killed during the hostage crisis. Gary had claimed the man was already a zombie, but at first glance, the corpse seemed perfectly normal. That is, until they noticed something strange. It looked like the man had been dead for much longer than just a few hours. Mulder continued investigating by visiting Gary's home in search of evidence. As he looked out the window, he spotted the employee Gary had a crush on, watching him from outside. But her face looked exactly like one of those zombies. Before he could react, the girl fled the scene with the boss, who'd reverted to his monstrous form. Mulder began tailing the boss and eventually tracked him to the home of another female employee. He watched as the boss transformed into the creature and attacked her sexy body. By the time Mulder burst inside, she had already turned into a monstrous zombie, but still sexy. The next day, that same zombified woman showed up with the boss to file a formal complaint. Mulder had supposedly broken into her home. Skinner, unaware of the real events, could only apologize on Mulder's behalf. Fed up with his superior's fake kindness, Mulder exploded and cursed him out. As Skinner scolded Mulder for his behavior, the boss began transforming again, this time preparing to attack him. Mulder drew his gun, but Skinner quickly restrained him, believing he had gone mad. No one noticed the evil grin creeping across the boss's face. Because of his increasingly erratic behavior, Mulder was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. There, he pleaded with Scully. If the boss really turned people into zombies, there had to be some physical evidence on their bodies. He urged her to re-examine the corpse Gary had shot. For the first time, he understood the crushing isolation Gary must have felt, and Scully was the only one who could help now. Scully ran a new examination and discovered a triangular wound on the back of the victim's head. Finally, proof that something wasn't right. That night, a nurse injected Mulder with sedatives and strapped him to the bed, but without harassing his body. After turning off the lights, she left his muscles alone. In the darkness, Mulder saw the insect-like monster crawl up to his window. He screamed for help, but when the nurse returned, she coldly opened the window and said he needed some fresh air. Then she tightened his restraints. It was clear she'd been infected too. The creature slipped through the window, crawled onto the ceiling, and slowly crept toward Mulder. Meanwhile, outside the room, Scully, sensing something was off, rushed in. Despite showing her FBI badge, the nurse refused to let her see Mulder. That's when Scully realized the nurse had already turned into a zombie. She raised her gun and forced her way into Mulder's room just as the monster was about to strike. Scully fired twice. The wounded creature tumbled out the window, and once again, Mulder was saved just in time. The next day, Scully reported everything to Skinner. She revealed that a mysterious toxin had been found in the dead employee's body and confirmed that the monster boss vanished after being wounded. Several other employees, including the nurse, were also missing. Scully concluded that Mulder had been telling the truth all along. Thanks to Scully's support, Mulder was reinstated. In the final scene, a new telemarketer was pitching a product to a customer when he suddenly heard a strange noise in his earpiece. Panic filled his voice and he said, "It's coming." The story ends there, leaving a chilling implication. The monster boss didn't die. He just moved on to another company, continuing his comfortable life in upper management. The scene shifts to a young American chess prodigy locked in a tense match against a Russian opponent. The audience is utterly absorbed. Little do they know a sniper is set up in the stands. Mid-game, the prodigy's ears pick up a faint noise. He scans the crowd and fixes his gaze on the hidden figure. Without breaking his composure, he calmly calls check on his opponent, who freezes in shock. No sooner has the boy sat back down than a bullet rips into the Russian player's chest, killing him instantly. Pandemonium erupts as spectators rush the board. Inside FBI headquarters, Skinner is rifling through Mulder's X-Files. He tells Mulder that a Russian chess master was murdered a few days ago, and the case was assigned to Agent Spender. Knowing Mulder loves these kinds of puzzles, his boss comes by to tip him off. Mulder cracks a sly grin and heads to Spender's seminar. After watching the tournament footage, Mulder suspects the real target wasn't the Russian at all, but the child prodigy. It's clear the killer waited until the moment the boy sat down and then shot his opponent. However, Spender scoffs at the idea, but seated in the back, Agent Diana and Skinner both nod in agreement. Spender's face darkens. Cut to the Canadian Rockies. In a secluded cabin, the smoking man is brewing breakfast when two hitmen slip toward his door. As a seasoned survivor, he doesn't panic. He ducks out through the back just before they burst in, but one of them intercepts him outside. It's Alex, acting on orders from the secret organization. Alex's own loyalties are slippery. Today he works for Russia, tomorrow for the US. The organization's leadership has invited Smoking Man to rejoin their ranks, intrigued by the news he's still alive. Back to Mulder. He's driving with Agent Diana and Scully in tow. Mulder tries to ignore Agent Diana's intense gaze. They arrive at the foster home where the prodigy lives. The boy, glasses perched on his nose, exudes a maturity well beyond his years. Mulder experiments with small talk, only for the boy to arch an eyebrow and say simply that Mulder is thinking about either Scully or Diana right now, and one of them is thinking about him. Mulder yanks a hand over his face, unwilling to let the boy guess which one, and the boy nods and stops, almost amused. It becomes obvious the boy isn't just a chess genius, he's a mind reader. Scully dismisses Mulder's deduction, but Mulder, accustomed to her skepticism, asks Agent Diana to run a battery of tests on the boy. The look between Mulder and Agent Diana hints they've worked together before, which leaves Scully feeling oddly sidelined. Mulder later visits the jail cell where the killer is held. Spender bristles, insisting Mulder stay out of the case. But Mulder's detective skills outshine Spender's, and he's allowed to see the suspect. Mulder cuts to the chase, saying the boy can read minds. If the killer tells him who hired him, he'll see what he can do to help the killer. No sooner has Mulder left than the killer receives a cigarette pack with a note scrawled on it, saying he's dead now. It's clearly a message from Smoking Man, telling the killer to end his own life. Meanwhile, Scully and Agent Diana bring the boy to the hospital for more testing. He accurately names things on the back of sealed cards and even guesses multiple technicians' breakfasts. Scully remains unconvinced. This is too far beyond the bounds of science. Diana reminds Scully she and Mulder cracked multiple X-Files together years ago. She left the unit but still trusts Mulder's instincts more than anyone's. Scully's heart sinks. Late at night, Scully paid a visit to Mulder's close friends, the lone gunman trio. She pulled out the boys' EEG scan data, hoping they could help analyze it. While there, she also tried to dig up some background on Mulder and Diana. It turned out Agent Diana used to be Mulder's girlfriend. They were inseparable partners back in the day. Agent Diana was still closely watching over the boy. Mulder arrived and finally found a moment alone with Diana. They started reminiscing about their smelly past. She admitted that while Scully was very capable, her way of thinking didn't quite line up with Mulder's. Mulder said he understood Scully. After all, she was a doctor and liked to back everything up scientifically. Halfway through, Diana took Mulder's hand, silently suggesting she might be willing to return to the X-Files unit for him. At that moment, Scully unexpectedly walked in. She gave Mulder a cold look and left without a word. Later, Scully called Mulder to meet her in the office, saying she had a new lead. After Scully left, Agent Spender came by to check on the boy. In the underground parking lot, he bumped into the smoking man. The smoking man revealed that he'd used his influence to assign the prodigy's case to Spender. Just as Spender was about to question the smoking man's identity, Mulder showed up. The smoking man quickly slipped away. Seeing him alive shocked Mulder deeply, and he began to suspect Spender was involved in some shady dealings with the smoking man. The next day, Scully reported the case progress to Skinner. She explained that the boy's brain activity was concentrated almost entirely in the temporal lobe, meaning his brain development was unlike any normal person's. This likely explained his telepathic ability and unique way of thinking. Mulder believed the boy's gift might be the key to unlocking all the unsolved mysteries in the X-Files, and that's why someone wanted him dead. Mulder requested a pardon for the killer in exchange for revealing the secrets behind the boy's abilities. Scully fully supported Mulder's proposal, but Diana objected, warning that pushing for the killer's pardon would anger the Attorney General and trigger a chain reaction that could jeopardize her own interests. Scully looked at Mulder in disbelief, as if silently asking why he kept choosing exes like her. Mulder visited the killer in prison again. The killer told him the boy was a missing link in human genetics. From their conversation, it was implied that the boy might have some alien DNA. That very night, the killer received another cigarette pack, but this time the note inside was blank. The killer knew his time was up. Moments later, a man shot him dead through the meal slot. That evening, Scully tried to connect with the boy. He said he'd been hearing other people's thoughts since birth, like tuning into a radio. He chose chess because it was quiet. He only had to listen to one opponent's mind at a time. Despite knowing how dangerous his situation was, the boy trusted Scully completely. Scully and Diana changed shifts. Late at night, Diana was jolted awake by a nightmare. She found the boy standing by the window. He said he'd heard a gunman outside. Diana quickly pulled him aside, but the boy insisted the target wasn't him, it was Diana. Before he could finish, Diana was shot. The next morning, Mulder and Scully rushed to the scene. Diana was critically wounded and unconscious. The boy was missing, and the killer in prison had been murdered the night before. Mulder spotted the cigarette pack left behind and knew the smoking man was the mastermind. Cut to the smoking man handing the boy over to the white-haired man from the secret organization. The boy exchanged a few words with the man before getting into his car. The organization had gone to great lengths to lure the smoking man out of hiding, mainly to get their hands on the boy. With the mission complete, the smoking man quietly slipped away, letting others take the credit. Mulder recalled that Spender had met with the smoking man in the underground parking garage and became convinced they were working together. Furious, he stormed into the FBI and confronted Spender, throwing a few punches. But in reality, Spender was innocent. He didn't even know who the smoking man was. Not one to back down, Spender went straight to the Attorney General to file a complaint. Given the case's complexity, the Justice Department decided to shut down the X-Files unit once again. In the final scene, the smoking man swaggered into the Special X-Files division, casually grabbing several files before leaving. He ran into Spender in the hallway and seemed unusually excited. He told Spender that he held immense power and wanted to help him rise to a higher position. Spender, puzzled, asked who he really was. The smoking man simply said he was his father. Before he could explain further, an alarm blared through the corridor. The smoking man had set fire to Mulder's X-Files archives. Mulder and Scully stood silently, watching years of their hard work turn to ashes. It's clear that the boy, with his uniquely wired brain and extraordinary way of thinking, held the key to cracking the X-Files. But because so many X-Files secrets involved extraterrestrials and threatened the interests of the secret organization, they took the boy away and destroyed the archives. The boy's alien heritage means his story is far from over, and with that, the 5th season of the X-Files came to a close.